Let's do some cooking. Get a Nikon, add a little bit of red. What do you get? The ZR. Let's check it out and see if it's something that's going to be right for you. And this is from a content creator's perspective.
Sweet like wine, got honey on her tongue. One hand on a Bible, she got one hand on a gun. She squeezed that trigger, you as good as done. I should be running from you, darling, now to kingdom come. Cause my mother told me as a child, boy, don't play around with fire, cause you might just end up getting burned. And I know the wicked never rest, so I always try my best. But
Today what we've done is travelled all the way to London to check out a camera that I am personally very excited for, and that is of course the Nikon ZR.
And of course it was lovely to catch up with Bruno and everyone. This was a Nikon event to show off the new cameras and allow us to really learn the tech a little bit more. And this is what transpired, and this is my thoughts on the Nikon ZR.
We've got a lovely model here with us today, and also a pastry chef to allow us to really test out the camera and put it through its paces. Now we're going to be getting access to the camera in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited by, because I can do a few more bits and pieces, do a little bit more of an in-depth comparison between all of these current like FX3 styled cameras and Nikon's kind of win in this particular situation. The ZR is actually something I'm very really considering for the day-to-day shooting that I do here at Camera Centre UK, and I'm really actually very excited to see the footage and everything else in between.
This was the first time I actually had the camera in my hands, and it's got a really decent weight, a nice feel to it. Going into the battery compartment, of course, we've got the CF Express Type B slot, as well as that micro SD, which is a bit of a weird choice here. Moving on to the battery, it is of course an ENEL15, which Nikon have been using for a really long time. They've not added extra letters to the end of it and made it more expensive. Going over to the monitor now, which I think a lot of people are generally quite excited for, and it felt absolutely fantastic whilst shooting with it on the day. Looking at the top, you've got that hot shoe there that allow you to do the audio pass-through for the microphone as well as the XLR slots. You do have audio pickups throughout, and it does have very good audio internally on the camera. Looking at the top, you've got your 3 custom dials, a photo video switch, an on switch, and then a shutter button with a zoom rocker. On the back, you've just got 2 buttons and then a joystick to control the point. What I found quite comfortable when it came to holding the camera was actually taking the monitor out, and it gave you a decent amount of grip there, which makes it a little bit more comfortable. Now opening it up, you've got that brand new sensor, which we'll talk a little bit about in a second. Well, not brand new.
Yeah, it's a full frame 24.5 partially stacked sensor with an Exceed 7 processor inside of it. Of course, you've got the Nikon Z mount, which is probably one of the most useful mounts on the market at the moment, because you can even mount Sony glass to it, as well as even GFX. Been looking over the analytics for the channel, and 99.6% of you aren't actually subscribed to this channel. So if you could give me a little bit of a subscribe, it's a massive help for what we're trying to do here at Camera Centre. We've got a lot of things planned in the future, not just tech review. One of the biggest things to really talk about when it comes to the Nikon ZR system is, of course, the fact that you've actually got access to the Red RAW format, which is the R3D, allowing you to get a more intense color grade out of it and get overall a better image.
It's not just that either. You can match this camera to Red cameras, which is one of the biggest selling factors as a sort of BE camera to professional workflows. The other great thing about shooting Red RAW is that you can actually change the white balance as well as the ISO in post, and that does actually work with the dual native, apparently what Bruno said, which we'll look at a little bit more depth when it comes to actually having a unit for us to test. But I think that's not necessarily the single focus they should have here. This camera is a solid content creator's camera, but having the ability to do the Red RAW, I will say, was fantastic. And playing around with some of the footage that I got here, it came out pretty well. I do want to try it out in a little bit more of an intense environment and maybe creative outside of what we had there. But the Red RAW is absolutely gorgeous, and it was nice to play with some again.
You do, of course, have the ability to record ProRes directly in there in HQ. LT is coming, but overall this is a very well-rounded camera with 6K up to 60p, 5.4K up to 60p, 4K up to 120 frames per second in crop, which is a little bit disappointing. And then you've got the full HD at 240 frames. You've got 15 plus stops of dynamic range and a base ISO between 800 and 6400, making it a very well-rounded camera for low light imagery. You do actually have a 7.5 stop image stabilization built into the camera. And one of the biggest things I've been impressed about when it comes to actually testing it out here in London is the massive 4-inch display. It really brings to life the sort of like content creation that I do on a day-to-day basis.
Coming back to the camera now, let's talk about the 2470 f2.8 Mark II and their new microphone, which of course goes straight through the hot shoe. This microphone does actually have two tally lights, as well as the ability to control a bunch of different settings there straight on the camera, including the direction of the audio, which is a really powerful tool. And I do actually really like the Sony ones that I've been using day in, day out, as they have a lot more settings than this one, but this is a really good first step. And I will say the audio was really good. I'm going to check that out in a second, but what I wanted to do here is kind of show you what it feels like to vlog with it. So we're going to get that screen out, turn it on, and then also compare the size to the XE5, which is one that I generally just keep in my pocket in order to just get general shots with it. And the screen is almost as big as the XE5, which I found quite funny, but very similar size. One's got a full frame cinema beast, and the other one is just a day-to-day shooter. It's very interesting to see this comparison. Now, opening up the side of it, which we didn't talk about earlier, you've actually got your headphone and mic input, and then going down to the USB-C input and micro HDMI. Again, this is a very weird decision here from Nikon, but I can maybe see why they did it, to kind of keep everything really small and very compact. Remember, this is their entry-level camera.
It's actually remove any kind of fan cooling there for long amount of recording. It actually still remains remarkably cool, allowing you to record for over 2 hours, and overall just being a little bit of a powerhouse for everything when it comes to the content creation field. You do have the ability to put it into a portrait mode screen when it comes to the display, and you've got 32-bit float inside of the actual camera, giving you the ability to scream into it and still be able to bring back all of that peaking audio. So this is a check of the audio. It's currently peaking at the moment because I've not really put the audio levels down. So it's going to be interesting to test out that 32-bit float in order to see if it actually really works out very well. It's quite nice to actually shoot on this for vlogging style, especially because of where the screen actually goes. Your hand actually fits into that groove whilst you've actually got the screen out and you're vlogging, which just makes the entire experience a little bit more comfortable. I've also turned sports stabilization on. This is on a 20mm f1.8, and I think this might actually be my new setup, maybe. It's quite nice. So this is a test of the audio on the camera without the mic that this actually come out with, and that's 32-bit float. So hopefully if it's peaking or if it's too loud, I can actually bring it down and level it a little bit better. But this is the audio inside of the camera, inside of a busy kind of environment. And well, we'll see what it sounds like. With a little bit of a DaVinci noise isolation, which I put on now, it might actually be usable. We'll see. This is me testing out the actual XLR mic on the top, and it's actually super high peak.
Just to warn you, make sure you mute if you don't want to hear it, but this is the peaking audio and it's going to be very loud.
Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2. So that should be a 32-bit float test, and I should be able to then bring it down and just play that audio again for you. Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2. For you to be able to see. So that is the test of the audio. And we'll see what it's like with noise reduction. Again, this is 32-bit float, so I should all be able to recover all of this later on, hopefully. We will be getting the camera a little bit later on next month to be able to put it through its paces a little bit more and compare the FX3 as well as the Canon C50, and it's going to be an interesting comparison of that. I'm at the stage where I'm really tempted to look into getting into another camera brand, and this camera I think might actually make me switch. I'm not quite sure yet. I'll let you know if it does in fact happen. Nikon have really come out into the open and been like, we do video. Now, they're always really fantastic video cameras in general, despite the memes that you see out there all the time about Nikon being not very good cameras. They're excellent. They're actually really awesome. The red logo on this camera is really showing the combination of what can be achieved between these two fantastic companies, because Nikon's got the manufacturing, the manpower, and the knowledge to be able to create some really great consumer level cameras, and Red have the legacy that they've built up, being the rebel in the cinema industry and producing some of the best imagery out of their sensors, including their RAW codec. And that's the thing that's really fascinating here, is shooting that Red RAW format. Now, it does take up a lot of space. During the shoot today, I ended up filling up about 3 cards, and all in all that was about 10 minutes worth of footage. So when it comes to the R3D, this isn't necessarily the format most people will shoot in, but it's nice to be able to test it out in this studio environment. When it comes to day-to-day shooting, and that's the thing that I'm really interested in, is what's it going to be like set to that 12-bit, and even to a certain extent, if they actually release the 12-bit LT ProRes format, is that still going to be a format I could actually use? There is a lot of appeal to this camera. It's nice and small. You do have micro HDMI, but if you are looking to rig it out, you do have the option to actually get yourself a HDMI to micro HDMI adapter that goes into the cage and protects that ever important slot. Now, having a micro HDMI port is not necessarily the best, but it doesn't necessarily degrade the performance. It's just a lot smaller. When it comes to using micro HDMI, I think most people have done it at some point. They've broken a micro HDMI port or cable because it's just been hit. Full HDMI is a lot better, but it works out really well overall with this camera. The size, the format, the screen is beautiful. Having access to ProRes, RAW, internal, that's also awesome. What I really find interesting about this camera is that it's a camera that you don't really need to rig up. And I think it's been shown, especially here as well, rigged up to show the sort of cinema layout. But for content creators, for aspiring filmmakers, this camera I think is for you. And we'll see that when we get to test it a little bit more thoroughly a little bit later on. Now, the autofocus, I had a little bit of a test out, and at the moment, as it stands right now, I do find the Sony autofocus just to be a little bit more sticky. But you got to bear in mind, I've had this in a very controlled environment, and testing out how to change the settings to a better standard, I think is going to be really key to really understanding what we can get out of here. About this camera, I think is actually being more and more important to me, especially because I live in Britain, is the fact that this is a magnesium alloy weather-sealed fanless body, so there is no place for moisture or water to get into, which makes going out shooting every day, especially in bad weather, very viable. The weight of the lens, the weight of the camera is just 540 grams, which is also excellent. The thing that I do find frustrating about Nikon lenses, though, in particular, is that they tend to be a little bit more on the large end when compared to Sony. I did actually try it out with the 24-70 f2.8 Mark II, and that was a very enlightening experience for me when it comes to what I would really get if I was to go to this system. Because it's nice and light, it's internal, so that weather resistance is still there, making me be able to shoot in any kind of weather condition. And that is actually a really important thing for me, which I didn't really expect it to be. Now, there was a few interesting points made whilst actually shooting with the product today, and that is the fact that although the 32-bit float directional audio, or the direction that you pick it to be, is accessible in the camera, it is only accessible in the H.265 format and H.264 format, not the ProRes. Now, I did make the interesting point to the people that are asking about it here. If you're actually to use this camera to shoot ProRes, you're not necessarily going to be using the internal mic as something more serious. It's going to be your scratch audio.
To be a bit more clear here, you can record 32-bit float in every mode. It's the direction of the microphone's internal that you can't control, but on the mic on top of the camera, if you buy it separately, you can control it. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a weird choice, something that could be fixed by firmware, but other things that did come up, and from watching a couple videos online, is a lot of the things that this is missing. It could actually be added later on. Nikon have been very good when it comes to their firmware updates, updating some really interesting capabilities into their cameras. So one of which is OpenGate. although it doesn't have open gate right now, doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to in the future. Now, I have not been confirmed or denied that, but the possibility is still there if that is something that is really important to you. This September has been a very enlightening thing when it comes to technology. There's been some really powerful tech released onto the market. And I think, although I thought camera tech was going to be stagnating a little bit, because how much better can you make this stuff? It's getting better, and there are some stuff that is actually revolutionizing what people actually shoot with. Maybe not with the typical Sony that you're expecting, but with manufacturers like Nikon. It's only really the beginning. If you like this video, please like, follow, subscribe if you want to see more. Have a good day, and please check us out.